Welcome back everybody to the next tutorial of programming with Cocos2dx and Android Studio. In this part I'm going to be navigating our dev environment, which is Android Studio, going through a few slight differences and also showing you how to install other SDKs for different ROMs of emulation or hardware. Also be going through how to create a new class and sync that class with the build of Android Studio. I will be explaining the dev environment with all of these menus, buttons and tabs down here, because it looks like there's quite a lot, but a lot of them we aren't going to be using. I will only be explaining the main things that you really need to do in order to get a project up and running on either your virtual device is up here or whether it be a physical device. I will also try to explain a little bit about debugging, or how we can get a log out of our program so we can see what's going on behind the scenes a little bit, and all the important things we need to get a compiled project to either our virtual device or out onto a physical device. Okay, so we're going to start by showing you some of these tabs along here, some of the menus along here, and some of the buttons on what they do. I'm not going to explain every button and menu and that, otherwise we'll be here for hours and we ain't got that kind of time. A lot of them are quite sort of self-explanatory. You can hover over them and Android Studio and that will tell you what it's going to do, pretty much most of it. Again, as I said, I'm not going to show you everything because the things like version control, that's to do with GitHub. I'm not here to explain GitHub and how to get GitHub and stuff into Android Studio. Problems, to-dos, terminals, not interested in that. But I will be showing you the main things that we're going to need to get either debug or information back from either a virtual device or a hardware device in the top left hand corner of the screen right now, through either the debug or the logcat, which we're going to use. And I'm also going to be explaining a little bit of the differences between compilers from lower down from the version that we're using at the moment, which is Flamingo. So let's start going through the bottom tabs at the moment. So as you can see, it's on the run. Now there's been a slight difference or a slight update between Flamingo, which I'm using here at the moment, from Chipmunk, which was an earlier version. Whenever I wanted to log something out by typing cc log in Cocos, it would actually be logged out here into the run, but that doesn't happen anymore. With the new Flamingo, they've now moved it over to this logcat. And as you can see, I've typed in Cocos2dx at the moment, or you can type debug info or probably just debug. But if I remove that now, you can see that this is actually a filter just here in the logcat. And if I take that off and I actually stop what's on the top left hand corner there, you see that I've actually stopped. I've got no programs running whatsoever in Android Studio. But you can see there's an awful lot of thing that the system's doing at the moment. There's an awful lot going in the background, considering it's not got any programs running, any sub programs running or anything. Oh, let's close that. No, it just tells us you're removing it and freeing up memory. It's checking the battery and that, so battery swelling mode, whatever that is. But as you can see, there's an awful lot going on. We only want the debug info from Cocos, so we can type debug and it will only give us debug, which we're putting from our program. or I believe it saves it in here. If I click on here, here we are. Let's go back to Cocos2dx. So it will only show us anything from our packages. Here it says your domain.test.1, which is what I have here. So let's run the program again now, and we'll have a look at the logcat, and you can see that anything that says Cocos2dx is outputted to the console now. So that's how we can do debug on Cocos2dx, is through the logcat and typing in simply Cocos2dx here, or debug info, or any other stuff that you want to sort of log. So debug info, you might get away with just debug. There we are. Got away with just showing us debug only. Again, I'll run that again. Yeah. And we'll look at the logcat, and there we are. And that's all we've got out of it. I'll come back to this in a little while, and I'll show you how to do 2 bits of debugging with the debug tab up here, or how we can log it out into the debug here. For now, I'm just going to finish off here, which is with the build tab, and then we'll write the debug as well. So in the build tab here, you can see if I just compile it, it shows us in here what it's actually doing. It tells us that our build is successful. If it's not successful, this is where it shows us where all the errors are on that in our program, or mistakes that we've made. So let's start off by making a mistake, and we're going to go into the Hello World program, and the way we're going to reach it is through this tab here. We're going to go through here, but as you can see, there's another little tab here which you click on, and it's got the project, packages, everything, project source code. We can get to our project through here, the source code as well. It's right there. But for now, we're going to leave it on the Android Studio, because I'm going to show you how to create a class in there. So let's leave it on Android Studio, and let's also click on the test1 program, which is what we created, this test1. We're going to click on the CPP, we're going to click on the classes, and we're going to go to the Hello World scene, double click that, and we're going to go down here to the bottom here somewhere, and we're just going to make a mistake. Okay, it shows up in red here, but also if I try to compile that now and we look at our build tab here, it's going to come up with an error. There we are, and it's going to tell us at the end there that we've got an error. It's all gone red, and it's in our Hello World scene. It's on line 119, place 5. And if we look down the left hand side here, 119, place 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that tells us exactly who, what, where, and when our error is. So the build tab shows us where our errors are in that, or mistakes that we've created. Moving back to the logcat, we can now get some debugging information out. So seeing that we're now in our class here where I made a bit of a mistake, we'll move on to a little bit of debugging, how we can get 2 bits of debug out of there. And the first way is in Cocos2dx, we can type cc log, which is Cocos log, and it works exactly the same way as a printf statement. Hello world. Yeah. And we can run it exactly. Let's just put a number there. Let's do a %decimal. I'm presuming you all know C++. I'm not here to teach you C++, and I'll put the number 5. So with cc log, we can log things out, and we can log it straight out to our logcat here. So if I run that now on the program on our system there, as I said, 90% of the time we'll be writing a little bit of code here and pressing that button here. So that's now running. If we now look at our logcat down at the bottom, oh dearie me, it's got a lot of debug. It shouldn't be showing us all of that. Let's get rid of that and just say show me the money. So the money shot is there. So I've typed in, it's on there. I clicked on there, and as you can see here, it is hello world 5. So it's just a simple printf statement, basically runs in the same format as printf. Yeah. And we can get some debug information straight out to the logcat on what we're doing. So if we wanted to query, say, the sprite name there, so let's change that to a S for string, and we're going to get the sprite, and we're going to say get name, and the string of it, we could output it straight like that if we want some debug. Now, let's go on to the more complicated debug, which this is what you're probably going to be doing, I don't know, probably 80% of the time. But we'll go on to the other debug, which is up here, where you can see there's a little bug thing here, and we can run it there. Now, for me on this is a little bit too much overkill, because this is where it's going to go through chopping through lines and mistakes and that. Now, at the moment, it will run perfectly fine on the system. Just give it a second. Takes a bit of time, and it's going to attach itself to the system, and it's running hello world. Isn't really doing much at the moment because we haven't put any break lines in or any breaks or anything. So let's put a break line in, and we'll run through the debugs. So how we're going to do that is literally go to the line where you want to. So it's 52. I'm going to left click on there. Yeah. And then I shall press the debug again. And what should happen is it should halt on this line here. See, there's a little thing there. It's going to halt, hopefully. Give it a little bit of time again. Debug is a little bit hard. There we are. So now it's halted on this line, and it tells me that we're there. And then just down here, we can step over the instructions one at a time. We can step into an instruction. We can force to step into an instruction. Not sure what that's about. Maybe they have a bit of trouble going into instructions. I've never seen that before. And we can also step out of an instruction and run to cursor. So right now I'm going to go to this if statement here. So let's just say, let's step over that, which then does visible size. And then you can click in here and look at what the physical size is, or visible size, sorry, of our system. So I'm using 480 by 288. Now let's run to the next thing here, which we're going to use this here, and it says run to cursor. So let's go to there, and it skips over these instructions and run straight and broke there where this arrow is. And then we can look at all these lovely variables, the options and the origins and all of this sort of stuff, and close item and what's going on. But that's a little bit too much for what we really need. As I said, I'm more for a person that will just, you know, I need to know what's in that variable there, and I will log it straight out to the logcat here. Yeah. We'll go back to our debug there. Where's our debug? And click on that tab, and we'll go to step over, step over, step over, and now we'll continue the program by run to cursor. And now our program's running, and it's just fully running now because I've got no more breaks along there. Now I can stop the program on there, and what we'll do is, if you don't want to run the debug, if you've got some of these things here, you can literally just press the run and it will ignore our breakpoints that we've put in here. And simply to remove the breakpoints, we can just left click on them to remove them, and then you can go and set new ones wherever you want, just simply by clicking along this line here. And that's all there is to debug. But that kind of debug is too much and too low. As I said, we can just write a simple CC log to find out what's in something and look at your log cat. So that's debugging. Let's move on to some of the menus and some of the tabs up here, because this is what you're going to do. And I think the next thing that we should do, which is the main thing that you need to do, is to create a new class and sync it with the project. So let's move on to that right now. So let's start by creating a new class and syncing with the project. And the way we're going to do that, now between Android Studio and Windows and the Explorer and that, we're going to need to create these two classes here. So we're in our test1 project and we're in classes. Now in Windows, if I do a new folder, leave it as that and create that new folder, when I come into Android Studio, you'll see that in our classes it's reflected the same thing. So it's kind of synced with Android Studio, and Android Studio sort of syncs with Windows automatically. The same as if I come into Android Studio, I right click and say delete, it will also delete it from Windows itself in the test. So you can see how they sync together. Now let's create that new class. So to create a new class, let's simply go into classes. So we're on our Android tab here. Yeah, we're in classes. We're going to simply right click and we're going to do new, and we can either create directories and all this good stuff, but we're going to create a whole class with a header and a C file for us. That's what we're asking Android Studio to do. So we'll do that, and I'm simply going to call it test. Going to put that in, and as you can see, it's created a test CPP and a test.h. We'll go and check that in the directory in the classes, and you can see straight away it's created them two files for us. Yeah, so they reflect each other. Now we've got our class and our two files. Unfortunately, it's not synced with the project. Now it says sync now and click sync now, but it won't sync them. It's still going to come up with this blue line saying this is not part of the project. So we need to include it into either the android.mk or this CMake list. So we're already on the Android tab, but if you look down here, you can see we're using a CMake list. If I click into that, you'll come down to where it says cross-platform source files and header files, and you will see that there is a classes app delegate, classes app delegate, and a classes hello world scene, classes hello world scene. So I think you can see the pattern here. We need a classes test.cpp. So that's what we're going to put in here in our make list. So we're going to put classes and test.cpp, and in the header file here we're going to have our classes and our test.h. So that's all we need to do. That's it. We're done now. Now, all we need to do is go back to our CPP and sync now. And that's how we get a new class and sync it with our project. Now, let's suppose you made a mistake and you accidentally done that. It's gone away. Oh gosh, you need to sync the project. Don't worry, you can do it two different ways. You can come to the file and go to sync project with Gradle, or you can simply come over here to this button here and say sync project with Gradle files, which is what we're going to do now. We're going to sync that now. So that syncs up the Gradle, the make list and everything. And then if I click in the CPP again, you see that blue line has gone away. It's part of the project now because we included it into the build, or the list of files that it needs to build. And that's how we create our new class. Now in our hello world, let's go and include that now. So I will type include and test.h, and now because it's all synced, we can now run that and we'll have a look at the build and we shouldn't have any problems. And that's how we create a new class that's now we can double click on and start doing all of our variables and that. So public, yeah, int a and int b and so on. Yeah. So now we come to the last part of this video, which we're going to be talking about installing the SDKs, as it's important, as for when you want to compile for different types of hardware, they may not have the latest operating system on, and you may need to download slightly older SDKs. So for instance, you can see here I'm running a virtual device of Android 11 and its API of 30. However, on my physical devices, you can see that I'm running a newer Android 12.0 and an API of 31. Or you can see that I have had an old Huddle 2 plugged in, which I compiled to, which is running slightly older hardware, and it's only running 5.1 Lollipop. Now, if I tried to, which through this menu, I would select which device I'm going through. The Huddle's not plugged in at the moment. I tried to compile, say, a version 12 or 13 SDK. It will actually complain and say, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I don't have the SDK installed to make the software for this type of hardware. And what we can do is we can install that SDK right now by going up to this part of the menu here, this little object box here, and you will see hovering over it, it says SDK Manager. Now, by clicking on that SDK Manager, you can see that we have all these different types of SDKs. Now, they're not ticked except for this API 34 at the moment. But by coming down here and clicking the 5.1 and saying OK, that will then jump onto the internet, which it's doing now, and it will download the SDK 5.1 Android 22 API, and that's it, and install it for us. So we click on that again, you'll see that it now says that it's installed. Now that's ready to compile and run. Once I plug the hardware in and select it, it will now build this same software or what have you for the Huddle 2. So that's going to be about it for this video. The main takeaways from this basically is how to create a new class and sync it. As I said, this is the stuff that you're going to be doing 90% of the time, and that's going to be coming to your classes, right clicking, adding a new class, giving it a name, and then adding it to your C make list. Other than that, you're just going to be writing a bit of code and pressing the run button. Maybe logging a few bits out into your logcat, and that's about all there is to the compiler. So hopefully I've shown you enough to get your projects up and running and that. And I want to say thank you very much for listening. If you like this kind of content, then like and subscribe. I'm going to be going through now the rest of Cocos2dx and creating projects and writing programs. So thank you all very much for listening, and I will see you in the next video, or you'll hear from me in the next video. So see you all then. Thank you all once again. Bye.